He was on his way to his first day as a leader in law enforcement, but two white officers saw Marcus Bennett as nothing more than a suspicious black man. His humiliating arrest went viral, sparking outrage. Little did they know, Marcus was about to become their new boss. What happened next will shock you. Marcus Bennett, a 42-year-old black man, exuded confidence as he exited a sleek, upscale coffee shop in downtown Atlanta. His tailored navy suit fit perfectly, the crisp white shirt beneath adding to his air of professionalism. His neatly styled hair, trimmed beard, and polished leather shoes reflected a man accustomed to commanding respect. In one hand, he held a takeaway coffee cup, in the other, a slim leather briefcase. Having recently returned to Atlanta to assume the prestigious role of Director of Internal Affairs for the local police department, Marcus walked with purpose, his expression calm but focused. Across the street, Officers Harris and Wilson stood by their patrol car, their eyes locking onto Marcus as he stepped onto the sidewalk. Harris, a burly man with a square jaw and a crew cut, adjusted his belt as he leaned against the car, his gaze narrowing. Beside him, Wilson, wiry with sharp features and an air of youthful arrogance, tilted his head, his eyes cold and calculating. The two had received a vague dispatch about a suspicious man loitering in the area. As Marcus moved toward his parked car, the officers approached. "Excuse me, sir," Harris called, his tone curt. Marcus turned to face them, his demeanor unflinching. "We've had complaints about someone matching your description," Harris continued, his voice tinged with suspicion. Marcus raised an eyebrow, his voice steady. "I'm on my way to work. Is there an issue?" The officers exchanged glances. "Let's see some ID," Harris demanded. Marcus calmly attempted to assert his rights, explaining there was no basis for their request. But before he could finish, Wilson grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back. "This is unnecessary," Marcus said, his voice even but firm. The sound of handcuffs clicking into place drew the attention of bystanders, who began recording. Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the crowd as Marcus was shoved into the back of the patrol car. The video quickly went viral, igniting outrage. While Marcus sat silently in the holding cell, his expression remained composed, his mind already strategizing his next move. The interrogation room was cold and sterile, lit by a harsh fluorescent bulb that buzzed faintly overhead. Marcus Bennett sat at a metal table, his wrists bound tightly in handcuffs that left red marks on his skin. He leaned back slightly in his chair, his posture calm, despite the oppressive atmosphere. His sharp eyes remained focused on the two officers across from him, their body language shifting between forced authority and uneasy aggression. Officer Harris leaned forward, his bulky frame casting a shadow over the table. His voice dripped with condescension. "So, Mr. Bennett, care to tell us why you were lurking around that coffee shop?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, his expression unflinching. "I wasn't lurking. I was getting coffee. But let's not pretend this is about that," he replied, his tone measured and calm, cutting through the room like a blade. Wilson, standing to the side with arms crossed, scowled and slammed a thin folder onto the table. Papers scattered slightly, the noise echoing in the room. "We're the ones asking questions here," he snapped, his sharp features tightening in frustration. The officers launched into a disjointed series of accusations, attempting to link Marcus to petty crimes in the area. Their fabricated claims lacked coherence, a detail Marcus noted with quiet precision. When they stumbled over inconsistencies, he calmly pointed them out, his demeanor never faltering. "Your timeline doesn't add up," Marcus said, leaning forward slightly. "Perhaps you should double-check your facts before accusing someone without evidence." Harris's jaw tightened, and Wilson shifted uncomfortably. Marcus's composed responses were clearly unnerving them, yet they pressed on, their tone becoming more aggressive. Before they could continue, the door to the interrogation room swung open. Regina Harper, a tall woman in her late 30s, with a sharp suit and sharper eyes, strode in. Her commanding presence filled the room. "I'm Marcus Bennett's attorney, and I demand immediate access to my client," she stated firmly, her voice slicing through the tension. Harris and Wilson exchanged annoyed glances, but had no choice but to step aside. Regina approached Marcus, her expression resolute. "This is an abuse of power, Marcus," she said, her voice steady but fiery, "and we're going to expose it." The courtroom buzzed with hushed murmurs as spectators filled every seat, their eyes locked on the unfolding drama. The air was thick with tension, the gravity of the case evident in every glance and whispered word. Marcus Bennett sat at the defense table, an image of composed professionalism in his tailored navy suit and crisp white shirt. His posture was straight, his expression calm yet commanding, projecting confidence and quiet authority. Beside him, Regina Harper, his sharp and eloquent attorney, exuded determination. Her charcoal gray suit and impeccable poise matched her razor-sharp arguments. Across the room, the prosecution presented their case, attempting to frame Marcus as defiant and uncooperative during the arrest. "He refused to comply," the prosecutor argued, his tone firm. "He created unnecessary resistance, prompting the officers to act accordingly." Regina stood to counter, her voice steady but piercing. "Mr. Bennett was not only cooperative, but repeatedly informed the officers of his rights," she said, holding up a series of documents. Among them were transcripts of the now viral video capturing the arrest. She placed the papers on the evidence table with deliberate precision, allowing the jurors a clear view. This arrest was baseless and motivated by prejudice. The room was silent as the footage played on a screen, showing Marcus calmly asserting his rights while being forcibly detained. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harris and Wilson, seated a few rows back, shifted uncomfortably, their expressions growing more strained. When Marcus took the stand, the courtroom held its breath. He began by introducing himself, his voice steady and resonant. "My name is Marcus Bennett. I am the newly appointed Director of Internal Affairs for this very police department." A collective gasp filled the room. Jurors leaned forward, and spectators whispered in disbelief. Harris and Wilson exchanged panicked glances, their faces pale. Marcus spoke with conviction, detailing his extensive career dismantling corruption and advocating for justice. His words were deliberate, painting a picture of integrity and resilience. The jury hung on every sentence, their expressions softening with understanding. Regina delivered her closing argument with a final, powerful statement. These officers didn't just arrest an innocent man. They humiliated their future boss. The weight of her words hung in the air as the prosecution visibly faltered, their case collapsing under the scrutiny of truth. The court ruled in Marcus's favor, and the officers faced suspension pending further investigation. But Marcus wasn't done. As Director of Internal Affairs, he launched a comprehensive review of discriminatory practices within the department. Harris and Wilson, realizing the gravity of their actions, faced public backlash and mandatory bias training. The video of Marcus walking out of the courtroom went viral. He addressed the crowd gathered outside, his voice filled with resolve. "This isn't just about me. It's about a system that needs change. Together, we can ensure this doesn't happen to anyone else." As the story unfolded, Marcus's actions inspired protests, conversations, and policy changes. The officers, once defiant, began to reflect on their biases, though the road to redemption was long. For Marcus, the fight was far from over, but he stood taller, knowing he had turned a moment of injustice into a catalyst for change.